Welcome to the Zen of Reffing Roller Derby. Bonus lesson, 12 new things in the 2019 rule set. I'm Maxis of Stevel, the author of the Zen of Reffing Roller Derby training manual. I'm filming this on May 1st, 2019. Sorry it's taken me so long to release any new videos or update anything. I've got a medical condition that flares up every few years in which I start coughing uncontrollably, and this will last for months at a time. It makes speaking for any significant period of time impossible without having like massive coughing fits, so I haven't been able to record any sort of new videos until now. The contents of this presentation are up to date as of this recording. Should this video become outdated, or when it's replaced by newer versions, such as What's Up with the 2020 rule set, I'll put a link on the screen to where you can find more information. As always, you can find the latest version of my full training manual at www.tinyearl.com/zenreffing. A quick disclaimer, and a new disclaimer actually. First, the WFTDA, MRDA, and JRDA are not responsible for the content of the training manual or this presentation, nor do they make any claims about the accuracy of their content. And I now serve on the WFTA Rules Committee, but they have not endorsed it's my son you're seeing peeking around the corner. They have not endorsed this project or examined its contents. I'm not speaking for them in this training manual, and I am solely responsible for its content. Another hi, little guy.
I'm getting my charger.
You're getting your charger? Okay. All right, have fun. All right. The joys of parenthood, folks, and the joys of operating without a green screen. Another note, if you spot any errors or any sort of outdated information in this presentation, please put a comment on YouTube explaining the issue and listing the time code. So without further ado, let's talk about 12 new things in the 2019 rule set. Number 1, the biggie. Jammers can no longer score upon other jammers. Ever! No more jammer lap points. This simplifies the work of jammer referees massively. There's no more not points for jammers in the penalty box. 5-point passes are 99.99% a thing of the past. There are still a few obscure ways in which you can score 5 points. For example, you could have too many skaters on the track. If a team fields 5 blockers, the referees don't catch it. Jammer comes and passes all 5 blockers on a scoring trip. They get 5 points. That's, not good for the officials not to notice that, but they get the points. Another one could be a blocker falls behind the pack. Like they fall down, they're winded, they get up, or they're tying their shoes, whatever. They're behind the pack. Pack comes around, laps them, and as a result, the jammer, for example, who passed them the first time got a point, and then when the pack comes around, the jammer's still in the pack. Jammer laps them a second time. So blocker, falls behind, gets lapped an additional time. Again, exceedingly rare, more hypothetical than anything else. And worth noting, star passes do not allow 5-point passes. Some people think, well, a star pass, you've got your, the pivot, and then the jammer becomes a blocker, but they're actually separate skaters, so you could score 5 points. The 4 blockers, including the jammer and the pivot. So no. We don't go there. So 4 points. Number 2. And this one is the most complex change in the rule set. We've got some significant quality of life improvements for skaters regarding star passes. Unfortunately, these are quality of life unimprovements for officials over there. They make things a lot more challenging for us. I'm only going to go over this briefly here. I'm going to be redoing the entire video on star passes, so you can watch for a lot more detail on that. But basically, in 2019, star passes are now much less likely to result in a penalty. For example, jammer transfers the star to the pivot, and the pivot is out of bounds, out of play, and the box cue are on the way to the box. Previously, we gave a penalty, star pass violation. Now we treat it as an incomplete star pass, which, as you may recall, means the cover is transferred, but not the position of jammer. So, the pivot is not required to relinquish the star. After all, they are pivot, they can carry that cover. But they must be warned that they're still the pivot, because, that jammer wheel might have only been half an inch out of bounds. The pivot really isn't going to know. They're going to take off out of the pack thinking they're jammer, and quite possibly the coach, all the other skaters, and the officials are going to think they're the jammer as well. So they need to be warned they are not the pivot. That warning is as much to communicate to everybody else what's going on as the pivot. Once warned, if the pivot had already put on the star, they must immediately remove it. If they don't, penalty. Number 2, if the pivot's not wearing the star, there's a penalty if they put it on. So, next, jammer, let's see, if a jammer transfers the star to a blocker, or the jammer transfers the star to a pivot who had intentionally removed their cover. Talk about accidentally in a moment. So if the jammer hands it to a blocker over there, again, we used to go right to penalty. No, not anymore. Penalty can now be avoided if the blocker immediately relinquishes the star. By relinquish, I mean drops or throws or hands it back. But by immediate, I mean immediate. You treat that as they're holding kryptonite. Like Superman doesn't want to hold kryptonite. Jammer doesn't want, or blocker does not want to be holding the star cover. They can't do it. So if they instantly go, and they drop it, fine, no penalty. If they go, oh, I'm not supposed to have this, and they look around and they find the jammer and they take 2 steps over and they hand it to the jammer, that's too late. That was not immediately. So if the jammer hands the cover and they go, and they just instantly throw it back, no penalty. Use your judgment on what is immediate. Next, jammer transfers the star to a pivot, but the pivot's cover had prior fallen off from natural gameplay. So in this case, we're going to give them a little more leeway. Yes, they're a blocker because they're not wearing, they're not wearing the stripe. But on the flip side, they might be operating under the legitimate belief that they are the pivot over there because their cover popped off just from gameplay. So in this case, we go right back. Officials issue a warning to the pivot. We tell them to drop the star. Notice, by the way, we didn't have to issue a warning to the blocker. Blockers know they can't touch the star. In this case, the pivot may think they're still the pivot, although they've technically a blocker because they don't have the star on. We're going to issue them a warning over there because they may be operating in good faith that they're still a pivot. So we're going to issue a warning to drop the star. Can't give a penalty until that warning is issued or until the pivot is aware that they're not wearing the stripe. And that may occur to them because their teammates may yell at them, or they may go to put it on their head and notice the pivot cover isn't on there and go, what? So as soon as they're aware, now they can get a penalty, and they have to immediately relinquish control of that star. So basically, once they're warned or once they're aware, just treat them as if they'd passed the jammer had passed the star to a blocker. Now, on all of that, who gets the penalty? Initiator of the pass gets the penalty. That's usually going to be the jammer, because the jammer is usually the one who's handing the star. Could be the pivot, could be the blocker. Basically, if they reach out and they grab the star cover out of the jammer's hand. Effectively, the jammer wasn't trying to hand the star, they took it from the jammer, in which case we're going to say that blocker or that pivot's the one that initiated to it. One more thing, star pass shenanigans may result in a penalty if it is impact, and shenanigans obviously is not the rule, that's my word. For example, jammer tosses the star to the pivot. Okay, it's not a valid star, it's not a valid transfer of the star, pivot does not become the jammer, but they're now holding it over there. But normally, as long as the pivot kind of hands it back, whatever, we don't worry about it. In the last rule set, we never worried about it at all. But if say the jammer tosses it to the pivot, the blocker, opposing blockers break off to kind of cover the pivot, jammer gets out of the pack, pivot tosses it back. This was an actual game strategy that was used on occasion over there. Now this has had a significant effect on the jam because it allowed the jammer to get through. Jammer got through the pack, pivot tossed it back, jammer takes it, and now they've completed, say, their initial pass. Useful for getting out if they were, if they weren't going to get lead anyway, the other person who had gotten lead, you just want to get them out of the pack faster. So now, boom, that immediately goes to a penalty to the jammer now in this, because this shenanigan had impact. Again, we'll talk more about this in detail in the star pass, or in the lesson on passing the star. Number 3, avoidable forceful contact to the back is now a penalty regardless of impact. Okay, what does this mean? Okay, normally you think of back blocks. Initiator skates up, hits someone in the back, they fall down, that's a penalty. Nothing has changed on that. What we're basically adding is a new threshold. We're basically saying that the back, we had too many cases where jammer would come zooming out, hit that blocker in the back at pretty high speed, but the blocker had really dug into their position and didn't give. The jammer bounced off, but now that blocker is going, on their back, and they're off to see a chiropractor the next day. So basically, there's a safety hazard of high-speed impacts to the back, even if it doesn't cause enough impact to call the penalty that we described before. So now we're going to say, if the jammer does 2 things. Number 1, it's avoidable, meaning they could have avoided that blocker, but they chose to go in. Okay, so if that blocker jumps into their path, this will not apply. So if the jammer has avoidable contact and it's forceful to the back, meaning, wham, they hit hard, that's going to be a penalty regardless of impact. Now, oftentimes it's going to be both. They're going to hit it. It's avoidable and forceful, and they knock them down. That's fine. You know, it's multiple. You're getting the penalty for multiple reasons now. That's fine. But if they hit it, they bounce off, and you're just like, that looked like it hurt. That's the penalty. Number 4. It is now unsporting conduct penalty, or misconduct, basically, to block someone into a downed skater. This is new. This is meant for actions where the potential result is obvious when the initial block occurs. Okay, case in point. Down skater, right here. Let's say it's a downed, it doesn't even matter what team they're on. You've got an upright, say, white jammer, and black blocker goes boom and hits them right in, and they know that because they're standing right next to this down skater, they know that they're going to block them right in and they're going to fall right over that skater. So that's a penalty now, because we really don't want the game to consist of trying to lob people onto downed skaters. So this is not meant for contact where there's little or no impact. You know, the jammer fell down, but they only really brushed up against the down skater. Yeah. We're not looking to call this penalty either if there's a significant chance that the impact might not have occurred from the block. For example, you know, that blocker goes in, hits the white jammer. White jammer actually wasn't that big of a block. You know, yeah, there's the down skater next to him, but the jammer should have been able to kind of keep on their feet. But then they somehow managed to stumble and just go right over anyway. But realistically, that block shouldn't have been able to send that jammer over that skater. So what you're basically looking for is cases where you're like, my God, that person just creamed that jammer into the down skater, or you know, whoever into the down skater. You know, things where they clearly were trying to knock somebody down, or at least there's a really significant possibility that was going to send upright skater toppling into a downed skater. You know, it's a safety issue. We don't want to see it in the game. Number 5, the results of an official review are no longer reviewable by another official review. Simple enough. Number 6, a skater penalized between jams now serves their penalty in the position in which they appear to be acting. That's a funny way to put it. Appear to be acting there. Basically, are they wearing the jammer cover? Remember, we don't really have a jammer between jams. I mean, I suppose if one was in the box, you'd say they're the jammer, but everybody's lining up. Oftentimes you got somebody on the track wearing the cover, but then somebody on the track, another person comes in wearing a cover, and they tell the first person to get off. So it's not like we have 2 jammers or something like that. But basically what we're going to say is, if somebody appears to be acting in a position, if they're acting like they're jammer, they're back there, they're in the jammer starting area, and they're yelling at the bench to throw them a cover, they're trying to kind of act like they're jammer, you know, as opposed to acting like they're blocker, versus, you know, like, they're going to serve the penalty in this position. In the old rule set, everybody served as blocker. Now, you serve in the position in which you appear to be acting, and you have some discretion to figure out what that is. Mostly, it's going to be obvious. Number 7, more flexibility regarding skaters that suffer from multiple injuries causing the game clock to be repeatedly stopped. That's a mouthful. What does this mean? Well, as you know, any skater who's injured causing the game clock to be stopped means they're out for the next 3 jams. In the old rule set, if they were injured a second time during that game, they're out for the remainder of that period. In the new rule set now, they're only that second injury has to be in the same period. Otherwise, it's just 3 jams again. Okay, let me explain the actual difference. Skater is injured in period 1. They're out 3 jams. Period 2 elapses. Skater is injured again, causing the game clock to be stopped. In the old rule set, they were out for the remainder of period 2. In the new rule set, they're only out for 3 jams, because this is not their second injury in a period. The first one was in period 1, this one's in period 2, so they're only out 3 jams. It's a fine distinction, but it's an important one, as you're basically going to determine whether the skater is allowed to continue play in the game, or whether they're basically out for the rest of the game. So yeah, this is an important distinction that head referees should know. Head NSOs too, for that matter. And matter of fact, all referees should know this, because you might have to correct a head referee who doesn't know this rule. Because like I said, it's a fine distinction. Number 8, not really a change. We're getting into some pretty minor stuff now. But we have a new glossary definition for forceful contact. A lot of skaters have been asking the rules committee, or a lot of officials really, saying, what does forceful contact mean? Well, now you have a definition. Abrupt contact, such as hitting or striking with a significant amount of strength and energy, or Any contact that either has the potential to harm the recipient or significantly alter their position, balance, speed, trajectory, etc., regardless of whether that potential was actualized. Boy, was that one a mouthful. And you're welcome. For those of you that wanted a definition of forceful contact, you got one. I hope it helps. For the rest of us, we're going to kind of know it when we see it. 9. Direction of the skater is determined at their skates. Now, that's no change. We always know if a skater is moving clockwise, counterclockwise, perpendicular, that's the direction they're moving. We now add a very fine distinction. What if the skates are moving in opposite directions? You're not likely to get this when they're going like this because the skater is going to quickly, fall down. But suppose the skater is spinning around. I can't really do this with my fingers, but if the skater is literally just twirling in place or something, if their skates are spinning, one's going clockwise, one's going counterclockwise, now you determine their direction at the hips. So that's how you figure it out. Number 10, revised criteria for calling for an additional jam at the end of the game. An additional jam can now be called if there are less than 30 seconds left on the game clock. Previously, there had to be no time left on the game clock. An additional jam can occur if the prior jam had been called off due to an officiating error or officiating discretion. Previously, officiating error only. Finally, the early end of the prior jam must potentially impact the outcome of the game, as in who wins or who loses. Previously, it was unclear if score had any role in such a decision. So, yeah, if the score is 100 points apart, there's going to be no additional jam. If the score is 1 point apart, and like it might have, then certainly could. But you can also use, there's a little more judgment in that too. Was there, had a minute and 59 seconds elapsed in that prior jam, and in that 1 second there was absolutely no way that black team was going to be able to score any more points, and as a result they could not have won, then the early end did not impact the outcome of the game, potentially impact the outcome of the game, and you don't authorize it. So, number 11, some clarifications have been written into the rules. These are things that, I wrote we already knew here in my notes. I already knew. You should have known them too if you've been watching my training. So, number 1, a jammer who's passing a penalized opposing inbounds blocker on the way to the penalty box earns a pass. Blech. What does this mean? Okay, black blocker is in the pack. Black blocker gets a penalty. They're starting to go to the box. They haven't gotten off the track yet, and suddenly the jammer goes past them, and the jam jam ends. Well, jammer got past them when they were on the track. That is earning a pass. Like that. Even if that was the only person they passed on that scoring trip, they're still going to get that point and trigger any other not points. Like that. Some officials were not clear on this point. Number 2, touching out of bounds with one arm. You're still considered to be in bounds. There were some issues with the definitions of inbounds and out of bounds, and the wording was not syncing up and it was causing some confusion. Those issues have been fixed. If you touch out of bounds with one arm, you're still in bounds. May not make sense, but that is the rule. When a skater is out for 3 jams due to injury, that 3 jams will extend into the next half if necessary. And that is basically because the 3 jams are not just a safety thing to give the skater a chance to rest if they've been injured. It's also a very mild deterrent not to fake an injury to call off a jam early. So if you wouldn't want a skater who's like, the period clock in period 1 has elapsed, so one of the skater goes down, pretends to have an injury, just to get it called off, and then they're back, beginning of the second half anyway. So, so yeah, if that 3 jams will extend across the next half, so skater could still do that in theory, but now their team's going to at least suffer the inconvenience that they can't field that skater for 3 jams at the beginning of the second half. Finally, there have been some specific requirements to reform a pack. They've been re-added to the rules. My lessons on pack formation already included these. They were included in the 2015 rule set. They were left out of the 2017 rule set. It's basically what the front group and rear group need to do to reform the pack during a no-pack situation. Most of roller derby has been playing by these already. I'm sure you know these, but they're now clarified back into the rules. And finally, number 12, just a couple little very minor changes. The word habitual has been removed from the glossary. This is no longer a thing. So you no longer need to teach anybody what habitual means. Second, the term bench staff, which I use as much as anybody else, is now being deprecated in favor of the words team staff. The issue basically being, team staff aren't always on the bench. They can be wandering around doing different things. Like that, team staff can sometimes include what people refer to as like turn coaches, like that. So that's not to say all turn coaches are team staff. That's an area that still needs some working on with the rules, but WIFTA has not figured out what they want to do with all this yet. So anyway, those are 2 minor changes in there, and these are the 12 significant changes in the 2019 rule set. Not saying nothing else changed, but when I made notes to train my local officials, this is the stuff I came up with. So I will be back in the next few days, putting up some new videos to go into some of this stuff in detail, like revising my lesson on back blocks, revising the lesson on scoring, and revising the lesson on passing the star. But here's a quick little something here for you so you now know what's going on with the new rule set. All right, thanks.